And here we are, the last but certainly not least of the draft dissections. Collingwood, Hawthorn, and the Tigers are all that are left. And I so hope you have enjoyed the series so far and have been enjoying what is hopefully a fantastic week for you. The weather, not really late November, is it? However, hopefully it can heat up over the summer and we can all enjoy some sunshine. Lord knows that Big Dazzling needs some sun. Let's be honest, my goodness, wider than Casper at the moment, especially on the upper arms and the legs, my goodness gracious me. However, let's get into it. 3 clubs to go. Hope you enjoy, like the video if you can, and subscribe to join the Daz Talks footy family. But let's finish off the draft dissections.
Wrong side for him, hooks it. Oh! What a mark! Sensational!
So for the Pies, given their off-season, I don't expect them to take all their picks into the draft. So I'm going to drop 79 from this conversation. Now, I think there is a very realistic way Collingwood can have, and I'm not making this up, the perfect draft. The perfect draft. Here's how they would do it. At pick 16 in the first round, now this might be a little bit risky to some, but sometimes you've just got to go where your list holes take you. Pick number 16 needs to be Harry Barnett. They need to take the best ruckman in this draft. They just lost Grundy. Let's replace him. I know what you're thinking. They really need a tall forward. Now, if they can somehow trade in and get ahead of Melbourne and take Jefferson, I'm all for that. 100%. But if they do take pick 16 into this draft, which will then get expanded to 19 because of the 3 father sons that I expect to be taken before this pick, Harry Barnett is going to be their best choice. Make no bones about it. And considering Cameron and Cox are still on the list, he won't need to come in and play straight away. However, because Grundy has gone to Melbourne, it is a little bit ironic that it's actually the other Melbourne ruckman, Max Gawn, that does have a bit of Harry Barnett about. Barnett is really good behind the footy. He's a really good contested mark, and he's the best tack ruckman in this draft. Is it a little bit earlier than expected? Yes, but Collingwood are in a position now where they can draft needs. And if you can do that, you need to do it. This is a window of opportunity that the Pies must take advantage of. So what happens when they hit pick 25? Well, they got to go to the Stingrays and take Henry Hustwaite. Yes, the Double H man himself, 195 centimetre midfielder who can play on the flanks, wings, and potentially even a half-forward flank, even though the Pies don't necessarily need that. Now, the Pies have got some depth now, so they don't really need to rush him in, and they can sort of figure out whereabouts on the field his best spot may lie. However, the fit for the Pies is just perfect at this point. Some guys that might be around that mark, and actually I'll talk about their next guy, I'll leave him out of this conversation. I think it might be a bit too early for them to take Caleb Smith at this pick. Could he be there at 51? It's probably unlikely, but that speedy rebounding defender, I know I've talked about Bailey McDonald a lot, but he might be around the mark as well. But if Hustwaite is there at 25, I think they just do it. However, you might need to take all those defenders out of the equation if at 27 they can take Jacob Ryan. This guy has got footy smarts up to the wazoo and would fit Collingwood perfectly. I still don't think they've got the run and dash off the half-back line that they require. Darcy Moore is still a really good intercept defender. However, their actual line breakers in the back half aren't really there. Isaac Quaynor is your two-way stopper, not really an accumulator. John Noble is pretty good, kind of underrated, I will give him that, but I still don't see his ceiling being an A-plus rebounding defender, and Jack Crisp is now a midfielder, as we know. So Ryan at this spot would be absolutely perfect. And then at 51, I would be going with either Harry Lemmy or Tom Scully, a key forward that the Pies can have a look at. Now, next year's draft is going to be pretty okay for tall forwards as well, so the Pies can double up here, but considering they were only a point off a grand final, they still can't be content with what they've got, even with the off-season that they've had, bringing in McStay, Hill, and Mitchell. There are still things that the Pies need to address, and they can do it in this draft. But let me tell you, I'm not a believer in draft grades, but the Pies would be getting an A+ if their first 3 picks were Barnett, Hustwaite, and Jacob Ryan. That would be an outstanding draft for the Pies. So that is the perfect frame for the Pies. They need to come out of this draft with a ruckman. I'm not sure if I would be gambling on ruckman late here. Barnett's the best in the draft. Go get him if Sydney don't with their first pick. For the Hawks, my Hawks, believe it or not, we are the most complicated team coming into this draft because the Hawks have got a gluttony of picks and only two of them are really good for a team that lost their two best midfielders in the off-season. So the Hawks are going to need to get their thinking caps on and to do some trade picks in this draft. The second round of the draft, I highly doubt the Hawks move any further up with their second pick, although the Giants pick 21 might be good for the Hawks. Like last year when they tried to get Matty Johnson off the Dockers, they could be looking at who's on the board and going from there. But let's start with pick 6, and there are still 4 options here. Now the least likely, but ironically the one that I would love personally the most would be Mattaes Philippou for all the reasons that have been discussed 1,000 times on this channel. But it is unlikely that he's there. I think if the Crows can trade in, they'll trade before the Hawks pick. They'll try to go with the Bombers there. The Bombers are as likely to take him. I don't think Gold Coast do, but hey, a 193cm midfielder to help out Touk and Matt Rowell. Why wouldn't you? Which would open the door for Bailey Humphrey to be a Hawk. Now, again, still a little bit unlikely. They would have to rely on Philippou going at 4 and Gold Coast taking either of Jed Buslinger, Jai Clark, who they could be reasonably interested in, or Ruben Ginbey, perhaps more likely, although I do see the Eagles ending up with Ruben there. The Hawks could still get Elijah Sardis at 6, which I will not complain about at all with that outside midfielder. And of course, St Kilda's Next Generation Academy, Cam McKenzie, is still at that mark. Yep, any of those could be a Hawk. Good luck picking it at this point. I do think if I had to pick a favourite, it would be Elijah Sardis at this point. I know there's a lot of work that's gone into Jai Clark. And he could be better than Warple and Newcomb. My worry is the Hawks have got too many of the same size and the same way that they play the footy. And it's nothing against Jai of the Clark variety. But if I'm the Hawks, I just don't know if I can do it. They know more than I do, so granted that. But just on the surface, I'm just not sure if the Hawks can do it, to be perfectly honest with you. But any of the other contenders are definitely going to be around the mark. Now, 24, I think the Hawks have really only got it down to 3 options. Jacob Constantine, if he gets past the Giants, the Hawks are going to need a Luke Bruce-style replacement, and the pressure that he brings in the forward line would help the Hawks forwards lock the ball in. The Hawks were 16th for inside 50s last season, or around that mark, but yet they were a top 6 team in terms of converting inside 50s into scores. So if the ball gets to stay in their forward third, they'll be able to score more. That is just the nature of the beast. So Constantine would help there. Henry Hustwaite, I've already spoken about him. Could the Hawks sneak in just before the Pies? That would be a little bit delicious if you're the Hawks. But again, 195 centimetres. If you don't get Philippou at 193, Hustwaite at 195 would go down an absolute treat. And if Ollie Houghton can sneak through, I think the Hawks would be silly not to look at him. I do think the Hawks need to come out of this draft with a forward threat. I don't think they can come out of this draft with 3 midfielders. Now, I think late in the draft, they would look at an Adam D. Aola, and I think that would be a pretty good move for the Hawks, so they could get some depth in that position. But if the Hawks are not finding threats around the ball from a midfield or a forward point of view, I'm not really sure what the thought is there. Mark McKenzie only wants to take 4 or 5 selections, and currently the Hawks have got more than that, and they're not really in a great position. So if the Hawks could go in with 6, 24, another top 35 pick there, maybe 48, 52, and 63, that might work. The Hawks' last pick of the draft looks likely to be father-son Jerome Lawrence, so that takes care of the tall forward depth there if it doesn't work out with Jacob Kaczynski, or if they try Emerson Jecker forward as well. And I'll see how they go. Or, of course, if the Hawks play 2 ruckmen, Ned Reeves at the top of the goal square resting would be dangerous, and we'll see how Lloyd Meek goes. But the Hawks, they're a genuine mystery at this point, and it's been really fun trying to cover it. But I will say that if I could pick the 2 best fits for the Hawks in the first round, I would probably go Elijah Sardis, reasonable, of course. Reasonable, it would be great to come out with Ashcroft and yada, 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 but we'll keep it reasonable. Assuming Philippou is off the board, I think the Hawks have got a hope for Elijah Sardis, and I really would take Henry Hustwaite at this point, and then hopefully get into the top 40 and take a forward threat there. Maybe moving up, hopefully, maybe getting a Kobe Burgell, who's a really nice user inside 50. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the Hawks do. Obviously, they are my team. But between the Pies and the Hawks, there's a lot of mystery and intrigue there, and two of the teams I'm looking forward to the most on the draft days. My wish list for the Tigers is twofold. One is don't waste these picks. Now, they could try to trade up if there's someone's on the board that they really like, but I do hope they do take two selections here. I think what they need to try and do is just get one player who works on the outside of the contest. I don't think you're going to be taking contested players at this spot, given that Taranto and Hopper have come in the door. You got Shea Bolton, Dustin Martin, Dion Prestia, all these guys still there. You drafted Tyler Sonzi last year, and they need a tall forward. They didn't take Jack Williams last year, which was a little bit strange to me, but considering they took the 5 picks inside the top 30 last year, they just need to try and develop a tall key forward. So Harry Lemmy or Tom Scully, somewhere in this draft would be a massive win for the Tigers, and if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, they haven't wasted a prize pick, and they can either try again in the next year, or they can wait it out and see how it goes. But the Tigers, they're laughing right now. They're going to have a fit Dusty. They've got Taranto. They've got Hopper. Tom Lynch was the most informed forward for the second half of the year. So they're in a really good spot. But that's it, guys. All 6 parts of the draft dissections are done. You can go and watch all the other parts if you haven't already. But this has been a joy to produce, and hopefully for you, a joy to watch and listen to. I cannot wait for the draft, and there will be plenty of draft reactions, speculations, and videos to come. So like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, join the Daz Talks Footy family, and most of all, take care.